So on to the next step. I'm beginning to assemble the turnbuckles. I've already separated the rod ends from the appropriate parts tree. Got 4 of them there. They will be installed onto these turnbuckle links. Just take them out of the package here. There are 4 of them, 2 different sizes. You have a longer, skinnier one and a shorter, fat one. See a little bit of the difference right there. 2 long, skinny ones, 2 short, fat ones. And pay attention closely to which one the manual's calling for when you're doing the appropriate turnbuckle. And here in this first step, it's asking for a M5 by 75 millimeter, which would be this short, fat one. In the next step, they're asking for M4 by 80, and that would be the longer, skinny one. So anyway, for this particular step, for these turnbuckles, I'll need, as I said, the short, fat one. Go ahead and get these threaded on to the appropriate length denoted in the manual, 45 millimeters. And then I'll go ahead and get this front bumper put together. Just these 2 pieces, couple screws, and then it gets a metal plate right here. After I get these both assembled, then these will all be going onto the front end that I just built.
Team Baxter.
I had a little trouble getting my rod end started, so what I did was use one of these supplied cross wrench tools. Not sure if this one came with this kit. I have tons of these. They come pretty readily in most kits. But anyway, I just stuck the turnbuckle in there, sunk it. This one's hollow. Sunk it down. Now it's sitting there so I can thread the turnbuckle. Gets one side done, and it'll be easier to do the other side then. So for the bumper, first I attached this metal plate to the front of this large plastic piece, very reminiscent of the old Exoterra bumper from the 1/10 scale Axial. So I kind of wedged that in place a little bit. It's in there pretty good and firm. You get 4 coarse threaded screws here, and those screw this plate in. So now I've got this metal plate on, and now the back brace kind of goes on there, gets secured by 2 screws with the bevel going kind of down so it sits flush on the shock tower. 2 short screws go in there. So now that that's together, it gets installed on the front end. Here you can see how the bumper sits on the shock mount flat. So get that screwed on and then move on to the steering assembly. Next up comes the assembly of all these steering parts. You get a couple of bearings into the uprights. You got plastic columns going on here. Bearings kind of get seated on the columns, the plastic columns. Do that on both sides. Seat your bearings. All these parts. A little servo saver going on here. And then the spring goes on top of that. Just general parts to put the steering system together. So I'm going to do all this and then come back when it's assembled. The steering assembly, or bell crank if you want to be correct about it, is finished now. And this gets installed onto the piece that I built a little earlier. The whole front end. Slide the front end of this bell crank up under, and The two plastic shafts that are in the bell crank get put into these two holes down here. You can see the two recessed areas where the plastic shafts go. So I'll slide the steering assembly in the place where it needs to be. Kind of push those shafts into that recessed area. You can see them sitting there. And then you have to connect these rod ends to the arms. I'm not going to do this right now. I am going to first proceed with putting the hood on this thing. So I'll be sliding this hood or whatever you want to call it. Looks like a Stingray a little bit. There's holes in the bottom of this that slide onto the top of those plastic shafts that are in the middle of this steering assembly. So those have to go down in those recesses, and there's a screw that goes through that with the little flat area that the bell crank spins on. Also, there's a reinforcing plate. So I'm going to go ahead and slide these two screws behind this reinforcing plate. So I got the two screws hanging through there. And then to make this a little bit easier, I'm going to go ahead and put these through the hood. See them hanging out there. Then I can push those screws with the hood and the little brace right through there. It'll help me kind of guide it in a little easier. So those two screws are in, and you're instructed not to tighten these all the way. So I'm just going to get them started. They're just in there, just enough to secure the piece. And now this whole assembly gets slid onto the tub chassis. Before I attach this to the tub, I want to go ahead and, since I skipped putting those links on a little bit earlier, go ahead and secure those from beneath with a couple of screws, button head, and they go in from the bottom. So the arms have been attached from beneath, and they're moving pretty freely. Everything looks like it's working pretty well. So now I go ahead and continue with sliding this piece into the tub chassis. Things are starting to get pretty big now. You got this monster front end that needs to get attached to this tub chassis. Huge tub chassis, kind of reminiscent of that E-Revo Traxxas chassis. A little bit more thick and seems a little bit more dense. Same kind of good, strong construction though. Anyway, this tub gets slid into this slot on this front end here. So the space is there to kind of sandwich this tub in. I'm actually going to try to do this on camera. So you can see that little nose there slides right in between there. And then from the top, you have to make sure that this slides over, obviously. And then it should just click right together. Pushed it in there tight, and everything kind of snapped to. You can see this barely, maybe, Axial logo forming right there. It's pretty cool. So now it gets secured by 4 screws at the bottom. Those there. And it gets a ton of screws up here at the top. These get tightened all the way down initially to kind of secure it into place. Then you get 2 on this side, 2 on the opposite side. Right in here at the top of this support bracket gets a couple more screws. So we'll get all those screws together and then I'll start to move on to some of the electronics.